Welcome to My Face, My Story, Voices from the Craniofacial Community, with your host, Dina Zuckerberg.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of My Face, My Story, Voices from the Craniofacial Community. Whether you're watching on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, click the subscribe now so that you'll never miss a future episode. I'm Dina Zuckerberg, your host and the Director of Family Programs at MyFace. I was born with a cleft lip, a hearing loss, and no vision in my left eye. My Face, My Story is about people like us being seen and heard, about sharing stories within the craniofacial community and with others. For tonight's episode, we'll discuss a topic that many can relate to, advocating on behalf of your children. We will hear from three parents who have successfully supported their children through medical procedures and surgeries and who have fought for their child to get the services they need, from speech therapy to in-school nursing care. They will also touch on how to advocate for your child in the event that they are bullied or excluded. Our guests will share what has worked and not worked for them in advocating for their child. Our first guest for the evening, Lenica Bruce, has been employed for 19 years as a certified surgical technologist at Garnet Hill Health Medical Center in Middletown, New York. Lenica has three children, and her youngest daughter, Annabelle, was born with Naegger syndrome. Lenica is a fierce advocate for her daughter within the school district, for her medical care, and with the insurance companies. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Lenica.
Hi, Dina. Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me on the show. Very excited to be on today.
Great, thank you. Our second guest, Max Singer, was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate and is the father of a child who was born with a cleft lip and palate as well. After graduating from Syracuse University, Max served as an infantry officer in the U.S. Army, followed by attending Cornell University, where he received an MBA. Max currently works as a VP in Evercore's investment banking practice. Welcome, Max. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Dina.
Thank you. Our final guest, Amy Sheffer, is a patient advocate, school educator, and parent of a child with Golden Heart syndrome. Her medical and family advocacy work began over 20 years ago in the education system, where she has advocated for minority families and students. She then spent 17 years advocating for her daughter, friends, and acquaintances with rare medical conditions. She is a part of numerous organizations, including National Organization of Rare Disorders Rare Action Network, and she joined Seattle Children's Hospital researchers in the ear community to advocate for national research funding. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us.
So happy to be here.
Thank you. So, can you each share briefly about your child and the craniofacial difference and a little background about who they are? Amy, can we start with you?
Yeah, Elena was born 18 years ago with Golden Heart syndrome. She was missing part of her jaw, part of her cheek, and her eye is different. And she had a little squiggle ear. And so she's had numerous surgeries, including just a couple days ago. She originally had a trach and a G tube, and she's gotten progressively fewer noticeable differences, but she's got a couple of big surgeries left to facilitate eating and speaking. And so we've moved twice to be able to find the right care for her, and we're very happily being treated at Seattle Children's Hospital now.
Thank you. I hope she's feeling a little better
She's
now that
doing
it's a couple of
great.
days. I'm glad. Thank you. Uh, uh, Lenica, can you share with us about Annabelle?
Of course. Annabelle is going to be 17. She has Nager syndrome, so she was born with an almost absent lower jaw. So she's had 36 surgeries to date. She has hearing loss. She had a trach until she was 13, and she still has a feeding tube, which may be out in the future. She still will have to have probably more surgeries, but she wears a hearing aid. She's doing great. She's about to be a senior in high school, which she's super excited about. And she wants to study interior design and photography. So she has a lot of goals, and she's doing really, really well.
That's great. I can't believe she's going to be a senior in high school already. Max, can you share a little bit about your daughter?
Yeah, so my daughter Lily was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate. I was also born with one as well, so she is the next in line of my family who has had that. She's a very happy little 5-year-old girl. Her first year we had a couple of surgeries, but we've had a nice little break where we've had some time for her to enjoy being a kid. And luckily, we also have a great team we've been working with. It's also a second generation team we've been working with at NYU.
Thank you. So, Amy, what actions have you taken on behalf of your daughter that have had the most impact?
I think one of the most important things is to really take a look at her medical care and educate myself about rare conditions as opposed to not rare conditions, because when she was born, we were in a rural town in Oregon. And even though I could have pulled together like a rock star doctor over here and a rock star somebody else over there, it really wasn't enough. She really needed a great team. And a lot of the important medical moves that we've made have just been situating her with a team with a lot of experience with Golden Har, a lot of successes with Golden Har. They meet regularly. They confer about different aspects of her care. The people that form the team all have years of experience and many successes under their belts. And when I started, I had never heard of Golden Har syndrome. So it was important to really learn the importance of teams, because a quality team with a rare condition is so much more important. So we ended up moving. We changed teams more than once. We went through what I think a lot of families go through, which is we started with what we thought was the right solution, and there were problems with that. And it was clear that the degree of impact of her Golden Har was greater than a lot of other families. So with the degree of impact, it was really important to have a top-notch team that could deal with the many more different things. Golden Har is a spectrum. It's also called craniofacial microsomia. So, the smaller impacted people might have a crumpled ear or some hearing loss or something and a crumpled ear. But Elena has, she had jaw, cheek, vision, hearing. She has some different vertebrae. And so having specialists that are talking with each other and coordinating care is a whole different ballgame. So the other main things that are really important were never to, like our family, not to take ourselves as secondary or to go, hey, they've got this, the doctor says this, and only go with what the doctors say, because the one thing that we know best is our daughter. And so just saying, well, the first consult we had said they would only do a rib graft and she would have a trach until much older. And we were like, no, she's a talker. This girl needs to talk sooner. So that was something that we brought to the table. They didn't really know her to be able to say that kind of stuff. And I guess one other thing is just having a strong network. We have very dear friends who are like extended family, and we rely on them and keep them posted, and having a larger group of people actively caring about Elena and knowing how she's doing and how we're all doing is really important.
I think you brought up 3 very good points about having that really strong center, comprehensive craniofacial center, and being able to network and being able to how you know your child best. So thank you for that. Amy, you and I talked about the other day, and you shared a concept that I had not heard about, which is the Oreo cookie approach.
That came straight from her godmother. Yeah.
And why you believe that's an important tool.
It is really, if you're going to be going repeatedly for surgeries and repeatedly for many very involved procedures and checkups and stuff, the Oreo cookie approach is sandwiching everything. Like, start with fun, do the hard stuff in the middle, end with fun. And it's not only fun, it's like joyous activity, celebration. And it was no small thing to pull it off. But I remember one day pulling up to the hospital, Elena's like, there's my hospital, you know? So for us to have made special, you know, canoeing one time or going to the zoo, you can't always do, you know, super complicated things every time. But even we have a favorite ice cream shop we go to. We do live in the country, so it's like we're in the city, we're eating city food, yay. And food tends to be a big part of how we enjoy appointments.
Thank you. It's a term I had never used before, so when you told me about it, it definitely makes sense. So Max, how has having a child with a cleft helped you to advocate for your daughter? And how do you think her experience has been different from yours, if it has indeed been different?
So, yeah, maybe I'll start with that. I think, you know, one of the great things about having things like this and groups who are talking about it is you get, like Amy said, communities involved. And that's, you know, frankly, very different than I think it was when I was growing up. And, you know, having the ability to just talk to other people who are going through those experiences, or, you know others who are going through those experiences is really critical. And especially for, you know, for a younger person going through, and, you know, you don't have everything figured out and you're scared. And, you know, you're different, but, you know, you still want to be like everybody else. So having that, you know, that supportive ecosystem that really exists now through MyFace and other organizations is, you know, frankly, critical. And it's just amazing that exists. For me, it's interesting because I kind of actually know a little bit of what's happening. Whereas, you know, Amy talked about kind of learning on the fly. Obviously things have changed, but, you know, there are certain things that, you know, are going to happen, and they're going to happen at about the same time. So for me, it's been, in a sense, perhaps a bit easier in that way. But I also have the advantage of having a fantastic wife who was an elementary school teacher and also understands that side of things. So that part I didn't understand at all. So IEPs and IUPs and really getting in with a district early on and understanding how to leverage that into having the proper resources that you need, and making sure you're getting that at the appropriate time and in the way that you need it. And really, you know, what I think I found is that the key to all of this is just being persistent and persuasive. There's a lot of great people out there, and a lot of them want to help, but you need to tell them what you need, and you need to be actively engaged. And then if you do that, I think, you know, you can get really fantastic results. You know, my daughter had been doing speech since she was 1 or 2, but very early on we started. Right. You know, that's made dramatic improvements throughout, because if you can get If you can get that level of care early on, it just makes a huge difference when she's now, 5, and she'll still continue to have that. But it doesn't have the effect it could have had on her, were she, because she is also a talker, not able to express herself in the way she wanted.
Absolutely. It's definitely key. Speaking of school and getting services and what you need, Lenica, can you share with us how you have had to advocate for in-school nursing care for Annabelle? I know that was something you had to fight hard for. And why was that so important for her?
Yes. Like Amy and Max both said, becoming an expert in what your child needs and on their condition is extremely important, because that's how you know what to fight for. You then learn, these are the things that my kid needs, and you make sure you get it from the right people. So Annabelle, we know that she needed nursing care while she was in school, because she had a trach, a feeding tube, had to carry a ton of supplies to school, from suction machines to feeding pumps to all sorts of things, extra trachs, whatever. She had to take these things to school. So it had gotten to a point where the school district had thought, well, we don't think she needs nursing anymore. She just needs an aide to basically follow her around. I fought against the school district and said she absolutely needs someone that is qualified to take care of a tracheostomy, take care of a feeding tube, and feed her on regular, intervals. I said, if her trach pops out, these people, nurses know what to do. They know what to do in the event of an emergency. If her trach became plugged up and she couldn't breathe properly, they know what to do. Someone that has zero medical background can't just follow your kid around and you're okay with that while you're at work and, worrying about who's taking care of your kid. So I fought up against the school district. They didn't want to provide the nursing care. So I then got in contact with, I have this organization that I have been involved with since Annabelle was born, Skip of New York. And they basically are they're your case manager, and they help you fight for things. So I said, I'm really having this problem. They don't want nurses coming to school with her anymore. So they said, let's fight. We ended up going to court in Kingston, New York, and we sat before a judge and lawyers. And I sat there and I said, my daughter needs this nursing care. She cannot go to school and just have anybody with no medical background that doesn't know how to take care of her. They don't even know what to do in an emergency. They don't know how to take care of my child. I know what my child needs. And we sat there in front of just all of these lawyers and everything. They asked me so many questions about my daughter's care. And I said, you can't tell me that any of you would be okay with your child being in school with someone that doesn't know how to take care of your child when they have a special condition.
Right.
1 week later, we got a letter saying that it was taken up to a higher court above us in Washington, and they had debated it and whatever. And they said, you've won your case. Your daughter is going to be able to have nursing in school. They said, you pleaded it correctly. You showed all of the reasons why she has to have it. And she was able to get this nursing approved for and paid for through the school district and through the state. So fought hard for that.
Yay.
Bravo for you for doing that. So Max or Amy, did either of you have a difference of opinion with the school district regarding the services that your child might have needed? If so, how did that get resolved?
Well, Elena, we originally had her in a Waldorf school because they have the same community of kids going up through, and we wanted to be able to educate them and have those kids know her. But then she got bullied at Waldorf, and they had a whole bullying training for the teachers, but not the playground people. She got bullied on the playground. It had a big impact, and they didn't really handle it well. And they are a private school. So, the long and the short of it is, they ended up going, look, we don't have to make accommodations. And we left. So, Lenica was talking about speaking up, and in many different settings, I've had to speak up quite strongly. There's educational settings. There's also, we had to get Elena referred out of her original service team, and that took some diplomacy and some grit. And so for me, the idea of being an advocate has a lot to do with speaking up in educational settings, like Lenica was talking about, but also in medical settings, in all kinds of environments, because people really don't know what to do with a different person. And often given the chance, they do something that isn't really proper for your kid. So, yeah, we had that at the next school district also, and we ended up making a homeschool and just saying, yeah, not going to do this again, because she already had the impact of bullying originally, and that made it that much harder for her to go into a new school. So long answer, but yes.
Yes, and I know, Lenica, you had Annabelle had an incident where she was being bullied, and she stood up for herself. Can you just share briefly about that and how she started to feel empowered after doing that? And did she feel empowered after doing that?
Yeah, she did. Dina, Annabelle just as well as most people do.
Yeah.
So, she was empowered. But we've always treated Annabelle very, normal, quote unquote. Just your diagnosis doesn't define you. You're still just like everyone else. You're going to go to school just like everyone else, and things could happen. So there was this child that had been bullying her for several years in elementary school. Actually, it was, they were young, but just even silly things like every time he walked by her desk would kick her chair just to kick it. And sometimes would like poke at her hair or touch her on her back as he would walk by. Just silly things. It started out like that. And he had been in her class. It was crazy. He just kept ending up in the same class as her for like 3 years in a row. Finally, by the third year, which was like fifth grade, I believe, they had these tournaments in class where they played Connect Four. And Annabelle was the Connect Four champion of her class. And every day, a different kid in the class would go against her in Connect Four. And they said, who wants to go? So finally, it was this kid's turn who bullied her and used to say all these mean things to her, but it was his turn, so she won. And when she won, he said, I hope you know that you're not really winning, we're all letting you win because you look like a freak. And wow. Yeah. And she sat with the counselor after school, and they said, listen, this is your chance. You can go on there and you can say, we're going to punish this kid. He did something really mean. He said something mean to you. What is your punishment for him? Let's pretend you're the teacher. Pretend that you get to choose his punishment. It was super mean. You choose. So she said, I just want him to apologize to me in front of the class and feel embarrassed the way that I did in front of the class. So the school called me that night. They said she was so strong. And she said, you know what? She says, they said, we gave her a choice of anything. He can skip recess. He can be on lunch detention. He can be any punishment you want. What would you choose? And she only chose an apology. And she wanted him to stand up in front of the class and apologize to her in front of the whole class, since he had embarrassed her in front of the whole class. The school made that happen within 2 days. They had the kids stand up in front of the class. They had the principals come, the assistant principal, the regular principal. They had a bunch of the teachers come, and some other kids that were, had been around and had known about the bullying. And they had like this classroom filled with people. And this kid stood up in front of the class and basically he apologized to Annabelle and, talked about why it was wrong to bully her. And he never bullied her again. And she felt that him being punished in that way, almost feeling the way that she did, helped her, because no one has really bullied her since. Like, it was a very powerful tool to use, a simple apology, and to make him do that, to apologize publicly.
Well, Annabelle just said that she loves you, Mom. So, yes. And I also just want to share that we have a comment from Dahlia who says, thank you so much for your advocacy on behalf of your child. Because of your courage, More people are learning about appropriate standards of care and education for children with various conditions. And I have to say, I agree with that. So thank you, all of you, for that. So I think that what a child doesn't say can be just as powerful as what a child does say. What if you have a child who won't talk about their bullying and just says everything is fine? How do you advocate for a child like that? How do you help them to find their voice? Does anybody want to
Yeah,
chime in on that?
I'm happy to take that one because I
Okay.
think I was the poster child for being that child, and I've come full circle on it. I
Mm,
think this goes a little bit to what I was saying about how things are a bit different now than they were before. But I think especially when you're a younger kid and you can't control things around you, having people making fun of you because of something like the way you look or the way you act or sound, that's not a fun experience. And first it happens, and then you go home and everyone asks how you're doing. The last thing you want to do is then relive the fact that earlier in that day somebody did something to you purely because of how you look. So I think really the key there is trying to get people to be comfortable to open up about it in any way possible, right? Now, whether
right.
that's having kids who are in a similar situation or just having time where you sit down at dinner or just getting people in a comfortable situation, because once you can open up about it, then it becomes a much easier conversation in general because it doesn't feel like you're holding all of that weight on yourself.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think for a very long time it was I would just kind of I wanted to act like I was being tough and it wasn't bothering me. And the reality is that just wasn't true. Of course it bothers you, and then that's just you get into you're just kind of internalizing all that, and it's not a good situation for you or anybody else. And it just
Mhm.
I think for me it took a lot longer, really more into adulthood, to kind of come to terms with some of that. But the earlier you can do it is the better you can do it, because it's just nobody wants to carry that or to be angry about things.
Right.
So just find any way that you can get somebody to talk about it. I don't think as a parent, nobody knows the exact right answer for anything. But I think if you just keep trying different things and you figure out a way to kind of break through, then you're doing a great job.
I agree. It's great advice. Amy?
Well, I just wanted to add that sometimes the timing comes back around, like with Elena. Life has a lot of funny plot twists. And she had earlier made a presentation to her class about an upcoming surgery and what she wasn't looking forward to, what she was looking forward to. And she got discovered by the Discovery Network and had a TV episode with another guy
Wow.
with golden hair. And they made an anti-bullying video together. And it went out on
Wow.
the TV. It went out on the Pacers anti-bullying thing. And then on all of the social media, she had a lot of people writing to her. So the very thing that she didn't want to talk about
Mm,
sort of turned on its head later. And it became very, it was great for her and everybody because she, she became really articulate about it, really passionately expressed, and she got to speak about it a lot through social media. Um, so I never would have seen that coming. As a parent, I was crushed that this happened and that she was so impacted and she didn't want
right.
to talk about it, and knowing what to do in that case, and I'm an educator. So
Right.
I was more leaning towards talk, 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 talk. And she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it,
Right.
so just keep in mind that sometimes on the next turn of the wheel, something happens and there's another opportunity.
Yeah. Really true. So speaking of school, have any of you tried to get an IEP or a 501 plan for your child? And if so, can you talk about what that experience was like and how important that was for your child? I think Amy, you had mentioned that before.
Yeah, we had a 504 plan for Elena, and actually, Max was speaking to this
Right.
earlier. Elena had a trach, and our first language with her was sign language. We weren't sure whether she would be speaking or not because they had not seen her tongue, and her tongue is affected on one side. So they said get ready for possibly not having the capacity to speak. So we started with sign language, and we got her enrolled in a class with an IEP where they did a lot of signing, and that was her first speaking. And then as things moved along, it was changed to a 504 plan. And then so there were a lot of navigations with that. She got a bone anchored, a Baja hearing aid much more recently. But earlier, the quality of hearing aid that was available to her without a ear canal wasn't really good. So we had special adaptations for that. And also she ate by G-tube. So by then her trach was out, but she did go to the office and get help with G-tube eating.
Right.
As part of the 504 plan.
And how old is Elena?
17? She's 18 now.
Okay, 18. Okay. Because we had somebody ask that. And I know that insurance and getting necessary medical care can be something that you have to fight hard for. Do you have any advice for other parents about succeeding with this type of advocacy? Because I know it can take a lot of time and energy to do that.
So one thing and it's interesting because now I'm going through it as a parent versus the kid, and I didn't even realize things like that were happening. But I think part of it, more than even just being your own advocate, is having a phenomenal team that can also help advocate for you. Having teams that know how these bureaucracies work and who they need to call, and who needs to pound the table for who. That makes all the difference, and that's not saying that you shouldn't advocate yourself in that sense, but having the right people on board for you is, it makes all the difference. So, we went to NYU, and for folks who know some of the people there, having, Hat and Margie and Shelly, and not just, having for IUPs, but figuring out who's the right person at the insurance company to call, and that makes a world of difference, because there probably may come a time where you have to step in and you have to be a bit persuasive, but people can help you get there. And in that sense, you don't need to spend all of your time and energy trying to just talk to the right person or get there. You can spend your time and energy being productive once you're at the right spot.
Right. It really is helpful to have somebody on the team that can really focus and help you with that. Lenica, did you have something to add?
Yes. I also know that, knowing which specialists are important and knowing about, certain things is really important, and also navigating the insurance company. I know that there was a time there when Annabelle had her trach where we weren't getting the proper trach supplies. And what I did was I basically, they were saying it wasn't medically necessary, not medically necessary. So I wrote a letter basically stating why Annabelle needed this special trach supply to go to school with, these little filters that fit on the trach. And I copied the letter. I wrote the letter myself, and I took one copy to her pulmonologist, her ENT, her regular doctor, her pediatrician. And I had this same exact letter, and I had each of them sign it as if it came from them. I said, I need you to do this for me. This is why my daughter needs this piece of equipment. This is why I have to send this letter to the insurance. And each one of them signed a different copy of that letter. So the insurance company received basically the same letter coming from 3 different doctors saying, this is why this kid needs this. It then became medically necessary. So I did that, and Annabelle got the supplies that she needed. So sometimes you have to kind of fight that way. And if you know the reasons why your kid needs something, fight for it. Just get down and fight for it, and get the doctors to back you up. And a lot of the times they will. They absolutely will.
Right.
And if you're not that person, find somebody. There, people will absolutely advocate for you if you're not, in, you just don't have that skill. You feel shy. There are a lot of people that will get your back, and if it's not, in our case, our experience changed so drastically when we were with the right craniofacial team, and they have advocates, and they have a whole fund that funds gaps between what the insurance pays for. All across the country, hearing aids are hard to get funded.
Right.
Elena got a prosthetic ear through the Seattle Children's Hospital Foundation, because a prosthetic ear is not something that was on her insurance. So if you're not skilled at that, find somebody, because you would never expect as a parent the extent you would have to go to get certain things done. Elena ended up getting a MedPort ear. The main guy for that, she needed a complex one. The main guy for that was in California, and our insurance wouldn't cover anything in California. So I made a pitch to him to please come out to Washington to do the surgery, which involved him getting out of his contract to only do surgeries at Cedars-Sinai, getting a temporary license in Washington State. It was incredible. And he did it. And he trained the person at our hospital. And you have to either be willing to really go for the gusto, as they say,
Right.
and that is just what Elena needed. And there wasn't, I tried every other thing I could think of, and that none of them were the thing. And thankfully, there are people out there who really are, willing to listen and do the extraordinary when they hear the circumstances you're in.
Right.
So, there are medical advocates and social workers and stuff who will get your back. You can find people to,
Absolutely.
Elena's godmother has been through many medical things herself. So just to hear her sit down and say, when I needed this, it took this. When I needed that, it took that. Oh,
Right.
then I learned, oh, this is what it takes. And so if you're not that person yourself, you can find somebody who will help you.
Definitely. And we have Pat Shabaro, who was mentioned earlier. She says, so proud of these amazing parents. So she is listening. So one last question. How important do you think it is to have a community of support such as that offered by MyFace or other patient organizations or even online communities?
I mean, it's critical. There's nothing worse than for a kid than feeling like they're alone going through this. Whether we talked about a couple of different ways, right? Whether it's talking to your parents or just having I had some very good friends who I kind of talked about it a bit when I was growing up. Just having somebody to talk to about it, it really just makes a world of difference, because then you don't feel like, it's this thing you're doing by yourself. Because the reality is, having something that's different is a journey for more than just you, right? It's your family,
Right.
it's the teams that are with you. And when it becomes a team effort and you don't feel like it's all on you, it's totally different than if you are doing it by yourself.
I always say there is power in the shared story and knowing you're not alone. And so when you have a similar experience, and it really is true. I know it's been true for me growing up with a cleft and that. So it definitely can make a big difference. Does anybody have anything else to add on that?
I do, Dina. I just wanted to say that, our experience with the support groups at My Face have been very helpful in letting Annabelle and myself know that we are not alone. I used to also take my kids, my two older kids, to the sibling support groups, and that helped them see that, they weren't the only ones that had a sibling that was different. We live in an area where there isn't really anyone else with a facial difference, per se, that goes
Right.
to the school or whatever. So it helped my two older kids also see that, other siblings deal with this. Like, sometimes it seems as if the child that needs so much care is the one getting all of the attention, but then they saw, we're not the only ones. Like, it's just sometimes they do need more help. They do need, more appointments. They do need more of mom's attention sometimes. And, being around the other kids and going down to, making the trips down into the city, 2 hours to go to support group, it was worth it every single time. Every single time it was worth it.
Yeah, I remember hearing that a lot from siblings, how it was hard on them too. So absolutely. And we just have one comment that you are all so creative, and I applaud you for thinking outside the box. And it's true. You guys do think outside the box. And it's really, I think there's so much wisdom for what you shared today. And we do, I'm sure we could go on, but we do have to wrap up. And so I thank you all for sharing your stories and wisdom and how to advocate for your child. The thing that I always remember is how my parents advocated for me. And I know your children are so grateful, or that they will be so grateful for all that you have done for them, and will remember it always. And I'm in awe, I'm always in awe of all of you, what you have done and continue to do for your children. So again, I really want to thank you for sharing so much of yourself today and every day. And I'm hopeful that these conversations can help others better understand our stories while also creating a kinder world. So thank you. For more than 70 years, My Face has been dedicated to changing the faces and transforming the lives of children and adults with facial differences by providing access to holistic, comprehensive care, which you heard tonight how important that is, education, resources, and support, and pave the way for better outcomes. To learn more, please visit myface.org. If you would like to learn more about the MyFace support groups so that you can connect with others in the craniofacial community, please visit myface.org/online-groups. And you can also learn about our parent resources by visiting myface.org/parent-guides, and they can be really helpful. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to MyFace's YouTube channel to catch future live broadcasts of My Face, My Story. You can also listen to the audio recording on your favorite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to receive email reminders of new episodes, please be sure to sign up at myface.org/mystory. That's myface.org/mystory. Thank you for joining us for this episode of My Face, My Story, and I hope you will join us for the next episode in August, where we will have a conversation with author, retired nurse practitioner, and cleft advocate Lucy Capo-Rome, who also goes by Bella Lucia, born with a cleft lip and palate. We will discuss her memoir, Lucia's Story, and Imperfect Beauty. That's it for tonight's episode of My Face, My Story. But remember, it takes courage to share your story, so be brave and speak out.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Paul, the Executive Director of MyFace. MyFace is a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the faces and transforming the lives of children and adults with facial differences. We do this through various programs and events such as the Transforming Lives educational webinar series, Races for Faces, the Wonder Project, and the groundbreaking My Face, My Story conversational series. You can learn more about all of these on our website at myface.org. If you enjoyed today's program, We hope you'll consider making a donation to help keep programs like this possible, as well as to further the support of the craniofacial community. Thank you.